So welcome everyone, and once again, happy Water Climate Action Day. This is the final Climate Action Day of the entire year for this year. Round of applause if you guys have participated in the other Climate Action Days so far. So this presentation is going to be all about how water is the connecting force between every living thing on this planet. Humans, animals, plants, even, like the atmosphere. It's the one unifying feature of the whole world. So just a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be starting off with some water background, and then we're going to go into a water footprint quiz. Don't worry, it's going to be a fun quiz. And then we're going to end it with some activism and what you can do in your own classes, in your own schools, even for the rest of the few weeks that we have left of the school year. So let's kick it off with water and climate change. Put in the chat if you recognize this graphic, more or less. What is it called? Water cycle. Yes, everyone who's saying water cycle, you guys are absolutely correct. Now, does anyone know why it's important? If you know, put it in the chat. I kind of gave a hint before. Water is always cycling and isn't added. Okay, that's a great one. What's one more? Water is reused over and over again. That is exactly right. And that's a little bit what I'm going to talk about right now. So as you guys can see, water changes phases all throughout the water cycle. Sometimes it's gaseous when it's, evaporating from trees and other greenery, and then it condenses into clouds. And then once these clouds get really heavy, it then precipitates. And you guys already know what kind of precipitation can be. It can be snow, sleet, hail, even rain. That's the most frequent one. And then once it goes down onto the ground, it'll all collect in various pools of water, and then it'll go down into the ground and the soil, and then the trees and the other plants will then take it up, and the cycle continues. But a really fun fact about the water cycle is that the water that we're drinking today is the same water that the dinosaurs and our ancestors have been drinking hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years ago. It has always stayed the same. It doesn't just disappear. It is always together in one form or the next, in a plant or in someone's body, and it always stays the same. It doesn't go anywhere. It's always with us on the earth. And speaking of water on the earth, our planet is nicknamed the pale blue dot because from space, our planet just looks blue. And that's because almost 3/4 of our planet is actually water, with all of the oceans. And you can put in the chat what the oceans are if you know them. And it takes up 90%, 97% of our Earth's water is in the oceans. And if you look right here, the remaining sliver of this 3%, that's the only water that we have on this whole earth that's fresh water, that's drinkable, right from the natural source. And most of that 3% is either in the Arctic or Antarctic. It's in these really big ice sheets and glaciers and icebergs all around the world. And a very little of it, so about 1 or 1.5% of it, that's in the runoff that we just talked about in the water cycle. So you can kind of see how it divvies up smaller and smaller and smaller. So even though our water is mostly, or sorry, even though our earth is mostly water, very little of it is actually accessible to us. Now, the real question is, think back to the water cycle that we just went over. If our ice caps and our ice sheets and our glaciers, if these start melting, how will that impact our water cycle? What's going to happen? You can put it in the chat. The salinity of the oceans will decrease for sure. Yeah, that'll definitely impact all of the organisms and the plants that require the salt water. Yeah, the sea levels will go up. That is a huge, huge impact for sure. What else? What are some other effects that we think are going to happen with the with more water in our water cycle? Yeah, the animals in the cold areas, all of the polar bears and all of the penguins and all the other creatures that are, need these icebergs for their homes, they won't have anybody. Less potable water, an increase in water. These are great. So you guys are kind of already getting a feel for it. And a few people mentioned sea level rise, and that is a huge, huge part of it. So if glaciers melt, the first big impact that we're going to see is an increase in sea level rise. And there's different levels of rise depending on how much melts. But, some predictions only account for like a foot, some account for like 60 feet. It all depends on how much we can do to prevent climate change impacts. But if the sea levels rise, no matter how much, more water is going to enter this water cycle. So imagine that cycle with all the transpiration, the condensation, precipitation, and the repeating cycle of that. Imagine it getting stronger and stronger, stronger with more water that we have. That means more water is going to be evaporating and more water is going to be precipitating. So unsurprisingly, the climate change impacts are going to become more and more severe. And I don't know if most of you know this, but around 74% of all the natural disasters between 2001 and 2018, almost a 20-year period, were water related in one way or the other. And so some examples of these natural disasters include droughts and floods, and it can be storms, or it can be like monsoons, all of these like heavy rainfall periods. They're expected to not only become more frequent, but also become more extreme, which means more dangerous. It's going to last longer. So instead of a hurricane lasting like one night, a hurricane could last 3 or 4 days. And it's going to occur in more places that had never even had a hurricane or a monsoon before, which means that they don't have the infrastructure to actually prepare themselves for this, which is really dangerous. Now, if you look at this picture below, this is a picture of a New York City subway last year. Remember when we had a really, really big, actually, I think it's 2 years ago, when we had a ton of rainpour and all of the subways were basically shut down. Do you guys remember this? Put in the chat if you have ever experienced going into a subway or having any sort of subway or other transit delays because of water. This is kind of a special situation that we're in because we're in New York City. So regardless of which borough you're in, you're going to have some sort of water impacts, especially if you're closer to the water. All right, now on to our second section, which is all about water footprint. Have you guys heard of a water footprint before? I'm sure most of you have heard of a carbon footprint. But our water footprint is very similar in the sense that it's the total amount of water that we use every day. And there are two different types of water usage. There's direct, which is kind of what most people automatically think of when they think of water footprint. That's everything including showering or taking a bath, washing your dishes, doing your laundry, any water that you're drinking or that you use in your food. But indirect is kind of the secret one that people tend to not think about. But if anything, it actually uses more water in your daily lives than direct usage. So every food item that we eat, it needed water to grow and water to cultivate and water to run those machineries. The clothing that we wear, so for instance, like if you're wearing a cotton t-shirt, the water had to grow that cotton plant. And depending on what shirt you're wearing, you might need more cotton or less cotton, which means you need more or less water to make that one shirt that you're wearing. And even the energy that we use, it takes a lot of water to cool down some of our energy processes and other like cars that we need. So everything kind of plays a role in the water world. And just to kind of tie indirect and direct together, around the world, our agricultural production accounts for 92% of our total collective water footprint. And this is not just your own respective one, but this is every single human around the world. Agricultural production. So whether that's growing like the grass or the corn that like our animals that we eat, or the plants that we eat, so much of the water that we use in our day-to-day lives comes from agricultural production. Now, this is the fun part. Don't worry, it's a fun quiz. But we're gonna test your knowledge to see which item you guys think is better or worse, and which one takes less water. So on the left, we have a picture of beef, and on the right, we have a picture of chicken. You can put in the chat two different things. You can put in your guesses as to how many gallons per a 4-ounce portion it takes, and which one takes less water, which one is more water conscious. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of chicken in here. Well, everyone who's putting in chicken, you guys are 100% right. So for a 4-ounce piece, which keep in mind, it's actually really small, it's less than the palm of your hand. For a 4-ounce piece, steak takes 463 gallons and chicken only takes 130 gallons. So good job, everyone. You guys got that one. But don't worry, I think some of the other questions are a little bit harder. Now, I already spoke about a cotton t-shirt, but now we have a battle between a cotton t-shirt and denim jeans. Which do we think? It's the same question. So for the one item, which one is going to take less water? Okay, I'm seeing a mix here. I'm seeing some shirts, I'm seeing some jeans. Does anybody have a guess as to how many gallons of water it takes? 100 gallons for a shirt. Okay, that's a great guess. 500 for a shirt. Let's see. One cotton t-shirt takes 718 gallons of t-shirt. So if any of you guys said shirt, you guys are right. And then jeans, believe it or not, it takes almost 3,000 gallons of water just to produce one pair of jeans. We have a few more. So on the left, we have a picture of tea, and on the right, we have a picture of coffee. Same questions. How much water do we think need to make for one of those? And which one is more water conscious? Tea, okay. Does anybody think coffee is more water conscious? Put it in the chat. Okay, we have a few guesses for coffee. What about the water usage? What do we think? Based off of what we know each and what do we think about for the food that we eat and the drinks that 300? Okay. 300 for which one? Coffee or tea? Tea. Okay. 200 gallons of water to make. And coffee takes 66 gallons. So this is for 1 cup. For 1 cup of tea and for 1 cup of coffee, you're actually drinking more or less 7 or 66 gallons per cup. Now, what about this one? On the left, we have a picture of taking a bath, and on the right, we have a picture of a shower. This one might be an easy one, but the next one's going to be challenging. Yeah, everyone's putting shower. You guys are 100% right, but you may not realize that it's only a little bit better than taking a bath because the water is constantly running. So, sorry, for the shower, it's constantly running. So you're actually using on average about 25 gallons of water every time you shower for like an average of like a 10 to 15 minute shower. Whereas a bath, it just sits there. So it takes a lot of water to fill up your tub. But once you're in the tub, that's it. So it takes 35 to 50 gallons. So it's only a little bit better, but every difference, makes it counts. Now, this is the tricky one. I'm sure you guys have heard that ChatGPT and other search engines are really bad for the environment because it uses so much water, but this is a little bit of a different question. So for 1 gallon of water, they have the same amount. How many searches do you think on ChatGPT versus Google can you get for 1 gallon of water? So like 100 searches, 200 searches, that's the answer that you're going to put in. Think of how many searches it takes. And which one's better? Which one can you get more searches for? Okay, I'm seeing mixed feelings. Okay, this is great. 5 searches for Chat GPT per gallon. Okay. What are some other guesses that we have? 20 searches on Google. Okay, is that 100,000? Okay, 10 searches. So this is quite a range. And I know a lot of people, especially the middle school and high school kids, I know, you're frequently using both of these search engines quite frequently, but let's look to see. For 1 gallon of water on Chat GPT, you can get about 1,200 searches, but on Google, you can get over 12,000 searches. So if you have a simple question, like if you want to look up the birthday of somebody, or if you have like a very simple question about like a grammar or anything like that, it is much more environmentally friendly to use Google rather than Chat GPT. So I kind of want you guys to take a second just to process this. You can get about, what is this, 10 times more worth of searches by using Google rather than Chat GPT. All right, on to our last few sections here. So I know today is Water Climate Action Day, but as a reminder, you can do any of the climate action days at any point during the year. So I want you to put in the chat what you have done or what you're going to do before I kind of reveal the list of a bunch of different activities. So you can take a second, put it in the chat. There's a bunch of different water action things that you can do. Yeah, shower shorter, that's great. Yeah, using this water footprint quiz that we just did, you can definitely use that to see what you're going to do either at home or in the school. I love that. What are some other things? Reusable water bottles, 100%. Think with our brains, not AI. I love that. Take action posters. These are all great. Turn off the sink when brushing. I love it. Now, these are some other ideas. So some people already mentioned some of these, but I'm guessing a lot of you didn't realize, just how much water we use in our daily lives. And so teaching your friends and teaching other people, your peers, or even your family, it makes a huge difference. So just letting them know. And then also just as a side note, I'm going to be sharing these slides out along with a student challenge after this. And so if you look through the speaker notes, you can see sources for everything that I put in there in case you didn't believe me for anything. And then alongside the awareness campaign, doing water advocacy and knowing how much water you use in your daily life is so important. I'm actually going to talk about this more a little bit on the next slide. But I did a water footprint quiz, and I know just how much water I use as well as my partner in our home. Have you guys heard of a rain garden? Put in the chat if you know what it is. But that's a great option that you can do as well. You can also do a water audit of your whole school. This Climate Action Day, we're really hoping schools will go out and clean your catch basins, especially because tomorrow we're supposed to get a ton of rain. So clearing them out, making sure that water will go into our drains well, it will prevent blockages, will help prevent flooding. It's really important. And we have a bunch of materials that we guys can help you with, including a visit from your sustainability specialist. Now, I told you that I'm going to talk a little bit more about the water footprint. It is so important. So in this picture on the top right, this was what I did last night. So this is the most accurate, most recent water footprint that I did. So I'm a little bit better than the US average per person, but it's a really informative thing. I had no idea that I use about 1,300 gallons of water every single day. So, when you guys get these slides on your own, you can take this quiz, but you can also conduct a water audit in your school. So you can see if any of the faucets are leaking, or if you guys have any, leaks in your walls or your roofs. It is so important because you can collect all of that water and water your plants with it, and you can fix all of your pipes. However much water we can prevent from being wasted Every gallon, every drop counts. And you can also do an advocacy campaign once you know what your school uses for water. And you can definitely get in touch with your custodian engineer too. They'd be happy to help lead a water audit with you guys. And the last thing is I wanted to leave you guys with this quote. So we have the ability to provide clean water for every man, woman, and child on the earth. What has been lacking is the collective will to accomplish this. What are we waiting for? So I hope you guys feel inspired and you have a bunch of different ideas of things that you can do in your schools. And thank you for joining today. Once again, this is recorded and we'll send out the slides as well as other handouts and everything, probably later today or tomorrow. And happy Water Climate Action Day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining.